What's it like to live in Bulgaria as a digital nomad, business owner, or retiree? That's going to be the topic of today's video. Now go over to adamfire.com if you're an expat or a high net worth individual. Now, some people on my channel have asked me to do some features on countries where you can live as a digital nomad, especially if I've lived in those countries or spent a lot of time in those countries, or for that matter, know a lot of people in those countries. Now, Bulgaria is not a country I know as well as some of the countries I've lived in Asia, but I have spent some time there. I do know what life is like there. And I'm going to talk about what life is like as a digital nomad or retiree or somebody who's location independent, living in Bulgaria. Now, I would say, first of all, visas is a big thing, right? If you're from a European Union country or even the UK or Switzerland, getting a visa is relatively simple. However, a lot of things in Bulgaria, like Eastern and Central Europe in general, are quite bureaucratic. So one of the frustrating things about living in Bulgaria is things take time. I have a few really good friends in Bulgaria and they all say the same thing. Things take a lot of time, and that's the legacy of the Soviet Union and the previous political regime. However, they've gone in quite a free market direction. Income taxes, corporate taxes are very low. But that doesn't mean that some of the legacy issues from the past aren't there. Now, when it comes to the cost of living, it's very good relative to quality. Even Sofia, the capital, is very good. Plovdiv is particularly good in some other parts of Bulgaria. So if you're living in Sofia, let's say you're two people, husband and wife or spouses or whatever, you both spend $1,000 a month. Actually, you can live a pretty good lifestyle on that amount of money if you don't have kids. And in Plovdiv, even less. And if you're spending $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month, you could actually live a really luxurious life. So it's a pretty cheap place to live relative to the quality. However, it's a very different feel to some other places in the world. So when I was even in somewhere like China, or for example, Indonesia, or some of the other places I've lived, even though it's not as big as, say, obviously the UK or the US in terms of expat populations, what you tend to find is there's quite a close expat community because there are not that many people in the country. So even though there might only be, say, for example, 50,000 expats in the whole country, there are certain bars, restaurants, cafes or whatever where you can find expats easily. So if you want to make friends, it's quite easy. Whereas what I did find in Bulgaria is most of the expats who live there tend to be from neighboring countries or Europe. They tend to integrate quite well, which is great, but by the same token, apart from a few groups like Internations or some of the Chamber of Commerce events, making friends is maybe not as easy as some of the places I've lived. Although, having said that, I think Sofia has actually, ironically, fewer expats, at least fewer digital nomads than somewhere like Plovdiv. So if I was based in Plovdiv, or you were based in Plovdiv, I think that in general, it's probably easier to meet more nomads, not more expats. And if you're a retiree, I think living on the coast, for example, Sunny Beach, you'll find many expats as well. The English is reasonable. It's not that good by European standards, but if you came from Latin America or most parts of Latin America, many parts of Asia, then you'll think it's pretty reasonable, at least. And obviously, like all of Europe, traveling is quite easy. Taking a flight 1, 2, 3 hours to neighboring countries is fairly easy. So in general, it's quite an easy place to live. And the way I would kind of describe Bulgaria is this: if you went to Bulgaria for a holiday or you lived there, for the first few months, you wouldn't think, wow, this is an amazing place to live. But it's quite laid back, it's quite cheap, it's quite safe, and it's all kind of fairly nice. It's not like a country which shines most brightly, but it reminds me of some of the other places I've lived in, say Asia, where you wouldn't think, wow, this is so amazing. But I can see why some people end up spending 5, 10, 15 years there, because it's quite a comfortable place to live once you know how to live there. So it's not a bad place to live. I would say that for European and British nomads and expats and retirees, places like Bulgaria and some other places in Eastern and Central Europe will come up as places to compete with the likes of Spain and Greece for retirees and nomads and so on. For non-Europeans, the issue is visas. It's not impossible, but it's much more difficult. So I do think there will be an increase in people looking at countries like Bulgaria for places to retire or be a nomad. Indeed, I did another video where I compared Georgia in the Caucasus with Bulgaria, because I think people are becoming more open to more adventurous expat adventures, and that's only going to continue. How can I help you? In two ways. First of all, are you an expat, a high net wealth individual, or just somebody who lives in a part of the world where it's difficult to get access to quality investment solutions? In which case, go onto my website on infuriated.com and find out more. If you don't fit into any of those categories, then in which case there's a range of free material on my website, on this YouTube channel, and indeed on my Quora, where I get over 200 or have received over 231 million views in the last few years. And finally, if you want to actually read my thoughts in more detail, go onto Amazon and find my book on there.